I never thought I would find myself in this position. As I sit down to write this, I can't help but reflect on how things went so wrong so quickly. My name is Mark, and I was married to a woman named Jessica for 8 years. We had what seemed like a solid relationship. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I genuinely thought we were in it together. That was until I stumbled upon the truth that shattered everything. Looking back, there were signs. Jessica started to change. At first, I chalked it up to stress at work. She'd come home late, often saying she had to stay late to meet deadlines or deal with some urgent project. I wanted to be supportive, so I believed her, but deep down, something felt off. She became more distant, and it felt like we were living separate lives under the same roof. The weekend before everything fell apart, Jessica was unusually secretive about her phone. She would keep it close, and it seemed like she was texting more than usual. Whenever I walked into the room, she'd shove it into her purse or change the subject. That nagging feeling in my gut grew stronger. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the little things began to pile up. The late nights, the mysterious texts, and her sudden obsession with her appearance. She started dressing up for work, something she hadn't done in years. Then came the fateful night when I stumbled upon the truth while cleaning out the spare bedroom. In that room, I found an old box filled with mementos, letters, photos, and trinkets from our early years together. I was sifting through it when I noticed a plain white envelope tucked in the corner. It was addressed to Jessica but wasn't from me. My heart raced as I opened it. Inside was a series of love letters, written in a tone so intimate it burned my eyes. The signature at the end made my heart drop. Tom. My stomach turned. Tom was a coworker of Jessica's, someone I had met at a holiday party a few years back. A friendly guy, or so I thought. The letters painted a picture of what had been happening behind my back. They described stolen moments, secret rendezvous, and a passion that had long been absent from our marriage. I felt sick. I had been blind, hoping everything was fine when in reality my wife was betraying me. I could hardly breathe as anger and disbelief washed over me. I collected my thoughts, steeling my resolve. This was it. I needed to confront her. When Jessica came home that evening, she was cheerful, as if nothing was amiss. I paced the living room, rehearsing what I would say. I wanted to remain calm, but the fury inside me was bubbling, ready to explode. When she walked in, I took a deep breath and asked her to sit down. Her initial reaction was shock. "What's wrong, Mark?" she asked, her voice laced with false concern. I held up the letter, my hand trembling slightly. "Care to explain this?" I said, my voice steady even though my heart raced. The color drained from her face as she quickly scanned the letter. She opened her mouth, and for a moment I thought she might tell the truth. But instead she unleashed a torrent of lies. "Oh, that's nothing. It's just a joke between friends," she exclaimed, her eyes darting around, avoiding mine. I could see the panic setting in. I didn't let her off that easy. "A joke? This is not a joke, Jessica. You've been having an affair with Tom." Her expression shifted from panic to anger, and she lashed out, accusing me of being paranoid and insecure. I was stunned. How could she turn this around on me? In that moment, I felt a whirlwind of emotions: betrayal, anger, and disbelief. I wanted to scream, to cry, and to demand answers. But I knew I needed to stay composed. I had to confront her with every ounce of strength I had left. As she continued to fabricate stories, I felt my heart breaking. I just couldn't believe this was happening. My wife, the woman I loved, was sitting across from me and lying through her teeth. I had thought I knew her, but this was a side I had never seen before. The woman I thought I could trust was now my biggest enemy. I realized then that everything I thought I knew about our relationship was a lie. The weight of that realization hit me harder than any betrayal ever could. It was time to figure out what I wanted to do next. The anger burned inside me, but I knew I needed to channel it into something more than just confrontation. I had a decision to make, and it would change the course of my life. Little did Jessica know I was just getting started. After our explosive confrontation, Jessica left the room, her footsteps echoing down the hallway as she stormed off to our bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I stood there in the living room, the weight of the moment crashing over me. I felt like I had stepped into a surreal nightmare. I wanted to scream, to tear everything apart, but I knew I had to keep my wits about me. Taking a deep breath, I sat down on the couch and tried to process everything. The letters in that envelope replayed in my mind, the intimate words cutting deeper with every recollection. How could she do this to us? The life we built together felt like a house of cards, and she had just blown it all away. As I sat there, I thought about the kind of revenge I wanted. I wasn't going to lash out recklessly. I needed to be calculated. I had to make her understand the depth of her betrayal and the pain she caused me. Revenge wasn't just about hurting her back. It was about regaining control over my life. I needed to make her feel the reality of what she did. Lying awake that night, I devised a plan. I wanted to gather evidence of her affair, and I needed to confront her with it when I was ready. I thought about how I could catch her in the act and expose her deception in a way that would leave no room for denial. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, not just for me but for herself, to realize how far she had crossed the line. The next morning was tense. Jessica tiptoed around me as though the silence could somehow mask the elephant in the room. I noticed her phone was glued to her side, and I figured she wouldn't let it out of her sight. I had no interest in playing her games anymore. She was acting like everything was fine, and I knew it was time to turn the tables. Over the next few days, I maintained normalcy. I went to work, kept up with responsibilities, and even engaged in small talk with her as if nothing was amiss. Inside, I was a storm brewing. I knew she was lying and that in her mind I was oblivious. Little did she know, I was simply biding my time. As Jessica's phone buzzed with notifications, I began to formulate a plan. I needed to find a way to look through her messages without her knowledge. I had installed a spy app on my phone weeks ago, just as a precautionary measure, not thinking I would ever need it. It was an invasive step, but I felt justified given the circumstances. I wanted to know every detail of her affair to gather proof that would be undeniable. One evening, while she was in the shower, I took my chance. I sneakily accessed her phone while it was unattended. My heart raced as I scrolled through her messages. There it was, clear as day. Flirty texts exchanged with Tom, plans to meet up, suggestive comments, and even a few pictures I wished I hadn't seen. I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak surge through me. I took screenshots of everything, my fingers trembling as I captured each piece of evidence. This was the proof I needed to confront her again, but this time there would be no room for excuses. I wanted her to see her own betrayal laid out before her, to understand the gravity of her actions. In the following days, I watched her closely. It was like I was living in a thriller novel, anticipating her every move. I played the part of the unsuspecting husband, attending dinner parties and engaging in conversations. But inside, I was a volcano ready to erupt. Each time she smiled at me, a part of me felt sick. I knew every smile was a lie, a mask hiding the truth of her infidelity. The plan started to take shape. I decided that I would confront her when I had everything in place. I needed to catch her off guard, to ensure she wouldn't have a chance to spin her web of lies again. I considered inviting Tom over for dinner under the guise of having a friendly get-together. It would be the perfect setup for the grand reveal. My heart raced at the thought of it. I wanted to see the shock on her face when I laid everything out in front of her. I imagined Tom's expression when he realized his affair was exposed. It was a twisted sense of satisfaction, but I craved the chance to take back control of my life. I wouldn't allow her to continue treating me like a fool. When the day finally arrived, I called Tom and extended the invitation. He sounded eager, oblivious to the storm brewing behind the scenes. I gave Jessica a heads up about the dinner, and she smiled, thinking it was a chance to reconnect with a coworker. I could see the excitement in her eyes, but she had no idea what I had in store for her. As the hours passed, I prepared the house, setting the stage for the confrontation that would change everything. I was calm on the outside, but inside I was a whirlwind of emotions, eager, anxious, and ready to unleash the truth. This was the moment I had been waiting for, and I wouldn't back down. I was ready to execute my plan and make Jessica face the consequences of her actions. As I set the table that evening, I could feel a sense of anticipation building inside me. I arranged the plates and silverware meticulously, making sure everything looked perfect. Ironically, it felt like I was preparing for a dinner party, when in reality, I was orchestrating a confrontation that would expose the betrayal that had shattered my world. Jessica seemed genuinely excited about the dinner. She was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she prepared a salad. I could hear her moving around, and I couldn't help but observe her. It was surreal how she could act so normal while harboring such a massive secret. I felt like an actor in a cruel play, and she was blissfully unaware of the plot twist coming her way. Tom arrived promptly at 7 p.m. and I greeted him at the door with a smile. He looked casual, wearing jeans and a button-up shirt. I played the part of the gracious host as I invited him in. "Hey man, glad you could make it," I said, shaking his hand firmly. Deep down, I felt a rush of adrenaline knowing he was the very man who had been sleeping with my wife. Jessica joined us, her face lighting up with a smile as she saw Tom. "Hey, I'm so glad you're here," she exclaimed, wrapping her arms around him in a friendly hug. I watched the exchange, my heart racing. The way she touched him felt like a dagger to my heart, yet I was determined to keep my composure. I had to remind myself of the bigger picture. The dinner started off casually, filled with small talk and laughter. I felt like I was floating above the scene, observing everything as if it were a movie. Jessica and Tom reminisced about their work projects, sharing inside jokes that I pretended to understand. Each laugh, each shared glance ignited more anger within me. I watched as they flirted, oblivious to the tension simmering beneath the surface. It wasn't until dessert that I decided it was time to drop the bomb. I cleared my throat, stood up, and caught Jessica's eye. "Hey, can I have everyone's attention for a moment?" I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Jessica looked at me, confusion etched on her face. Tom raised an eyebrow, sensing the change in the atmosphere. "I have something important to share," I continued, my heart pounding. "Jessica, I found something that I think you need to see." I reached for my phone, the screenshots of her messages ready and waiting. As I pulled them up, I noticed Jessica's expression shift from confusion to sudden panic. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice rising slightly. I could see she was trying to keep her composure, but her hands trembled. I displayed the first screenshot, showing her flirty messages to Tom. "Care to explain this?" I asked, keeping my tone calm while fury coursed through me. The silence was deafening as Tom's eyes widened in shock and Jessica's face turned pale. "What the hell is this, Jessica?" Tom stammered, looking between her and me. I felt a small sense of satisfaction in his reaction, knowing he was caught off guard just as much as she was. Jessica's mouth worked to form words, but no coherent explanation came. "Mark, you don't understand. It's not what it looks like," she blurted out, her voice rising in desperation. "Tom, it was just a joke, I swear." I couldn't help but scoff at her pathetic attempt to spin a story. "A joke? You think this is funny?" I asked, my voice rising. "You've been sleeping with him. How could you do this to us, Jessica?" In that moment, all the lies she had woven began to unravel. The veneer of calmness she had maintained shattered as her true colors came to light. I didn't mean to hurt you," she exclaimed, her voice shaky as tears brimmed in her eyes. "I thought I could fix it. Please don't do this." I felt the anger rising again, mixing with a sense of relief. I had her cornered now. "You thought you could fix it by cheating on me, by lying to my face. You've betrayed me in the worst way possible." I could feel my pulse quickening as I confronted her. Tom sat frozen at the table, his face a mixture of shock and guilt. "Jessica, I had no idea," he began, but I cut him off. "Don't even start, Tom. You're just as guilty in this. You had no problem taking advantage of my trust." I turned back to Jessica, whose tears were now streaming down her face. "Mark, I'm sorry. I was lonely. I thought you didn't care anymore," she cried, her voice breaking. "I thought it was just a phase we were going through." "That's your excuse. You thought cheating was the answer." I shot back, disgust flooding my voice. "We could have talked. We could have worked through our issues, but you chose betrayal instead." The atmosphere was thick with tension. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on all of us. The truth hung heavy in the air, and I finally felt like I was taking control of my life again, even if it meant facing the painful reality of Jessica's betrayal. In that moment, I realized this was more than just about revenge. This was about reclaiming my dignity and making sure she understood the depth of her actions. I wasn't going to let her walk away without feeling the repercussions of her choices. I took a deep breath, trying to manage the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. "I think it's time for you to leave, Jessica," I said, my voice firm. "And you too, Tom. This dinner is over." As I watched Jessica's face crumble, I felt a mix of sadness and anger. I had never wanted things to end this way, but now there was no turning back. The path forward was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was done with the lies, and it was time to step into a new chapter of my life, one where I would no longer be a victim of betrayal. Jessica's expression shifted from desperation to defiance as she processed my words. "Mark, you can't just kick me out. We can talk about this," she pleaded, her voice rising in pitch, but I was resolute. I had made up my mind. The moment she chose to betray my trust, she had forfeited her right to negotiate. "Jessica, it's over," I reiterated, my voice steady. "You've shown me who you truly are. I can't be married to someone who would do this to me." The finality of my words hung in the air, thick with unresolved pain and sorrow. Tom, still sitting frozen at the table, finally found his voice. "Jessica, I didn't know about your marriage. I thought you were just unhappy. I never meant to come between you two," he said, his face a mix of regret and confusion. I could see the wheels turning in his mind, trying to rationalize what had just happened. But I didn't care. His intentions didn't matter, the damage had been done. "Get out, Tom," I said, cutting him off. "I don't want to hear your excuses. You've been sleeping with my wife and now you want to play the innocent." He stood up slowly, glancing between Jessica and me, unsure of what to do. "I'm sorry, man. I really didn't know," he repeated, backing away from the table. I could see the guilt etched on his face, but it was too little, too late. As he walked towards the door, I shot Jessica one last glance. She was shaking, tears staining her cheeks, and I felt a pang of sadness for the woman I had once loved. But that sadness was quickly drowned out by the anger still simmering within me. Once Tom had left, the silence in the room was deafening. Jessica stood there, her body trembling as she processed the fallout. I took a moment to collect myself, trying to control the whirlwind of emotions that threatened to consume me. "Mark, please." "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her voice a mere whisper. "I was confused. I thought you didn't love me anymore." I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. "So you thought cheating was the solution. Instead of talking to me or seeking help, you chose to betray me." "I didn't think it would go this far," she responded, her voice breaking. "We were drifting apart and I wanted to feel wanted again. Tom, he made me feel alive." Her words cut deep. The realization that she sought comfort in someone else was a knife twisting in my gut. "You could have talked to me, Jessica," I said, my voice steady despite the hurt. "I would have listened, I would have fought to save us, but you chose to betray me instead." "I'm so sorry, Mark. I never wanted to hurt you," she pleaded, stepping closer, but I took a step back, creating distance between us. I didn't want to feel her touch or hear her empty promises. "I need space," I said, my voice firm. "I can't look at you right now without feeling sick." The pain in her eyes was evident, but there was no sympathy left in me. I had given her everything, and she had thrown it away for a fleeting moment of passion. "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight," she said quietly, a hint of resignation in her voice. I didn't respond. I simply turned away and walked into the living room, my heart heavy with betrayal and sadness. I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the wall while the events of the evening replayed in my mind. The reality of what had just transpired was still sinking in. I had confronted Jessica about her affair, and in doing so, I felt a mix of relief and despair. There was no going back to the life we had built together. It was irrevocably shattered. I thought about the years we had spent together, the laughter we had shared, and the memories that now felt tainted by her betrayal. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through the messages I had saved from her conversations with Tom. It felt vindictive in a way, but I needed to remind myself of the truth. I needed to stay grounded in reality and not let the whirlwind of emotions cloud my judgment. As I scrolled, I felt a wave of anger wash over me. Again, I couldn't believe I had ever trusted her. I had spent so long believing in our love, and this was the result, a betrayal that cut deeper than anything I could have imagined. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I fell into a restless sleep. My dreams were filled with fragmented memories of laughter, love, and the unmistakable pain of betrayal. Each moment felt like a reminder of what I had lost, and I woke up the next morning feeling like a shell of the person I used to be. Jessica and I barely spoke the next day. The tension in the house was palpable, and I could feel her guilt hanging in the air. I didn't want to engage with her. I was too emotionally drained to have another conversation about her infidelity. Instead, I focused on the logistics of what needed to happen next. I needed to decide whether I would attempt to salvage our marriage or cut my losses and walk away. The idea of separation loomed over me like a dark cloud, but the thought of staying in a relationship tainted by lies felt equally unbearable. I spent the day in a daze, going through the motions of life while contemplating my options. I reached out to friends for advice, sharing bits and pieces of what had happened. Most of them were quick to tell me to leave her, that I deserved better. But the idea of completely severing ties with Jessica felt overwhelming. I still loved her, despite everything. That evening, I found myself sitting on the porch, staring out into the distance as a storm brewed on the horizon. The clouds hung low, mirroring the turmoil within me. I needed to make a decision, but part of me still hoped that we could find a way through this. I just didn't know what that would look like or if it was even possible anymore. One thing was certain. I couldn't let this infidelity define me. I needed to find my strength again, to reclaim my life from the chaos that Jessica had created. The journey ahead would be painful, but I was determined to face it head-on. I couldn't remain a victim any longer. I would rise from the ashes of this betrayal and become stronger than before. It was time to take control back, and I was ready for whatever came next. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and heartache. I had spent countless hours reflecting on my relationship with Jessica, replaying our history in my mind like an old movie. I felt like I was living in a limbo, caught between anger and nostalgia. On one hand, I was furious with her for what she had done, but on the other, I couldn't ignore the love I had for her. I was torn apart by conflicting emotions. Jessica had retreated into a shell. She spent most of her time in the guest room, avoiding me when I was home. I could hear her crying through the walls at night, and each sob felt like a knife twisting deeper into my heart. I wished I could feel pity for her, but the betrayal was still too fresh. I had lost trust in her completely, trust that was built over years, now reduced to nothing more than shattered fragments. After a week of silence, I decided it was time to have one final conversation. I wanted clarity, something to help me make my decision about our future. I needed to know if she was truly remorseful or if she was merely sorry for getting caught. It was time to lay everything on the table and confront the reality of our situation. I asked Jessica to meet me in the living room that evening. When she walked in, I nearly gasped at how small she looked, her body slightly hunched, eyes red and puffy. I could see the weight of guilt hanging over her like a dark cloud. For a moment, I felt a flicker of compassion, but I quickly stifled it. This conversation was far too important to let emotions cloud my judgment. Jessica, I began, trying to keep my tone neutral. I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. I need to understand why you did it. She shifted uncomfortably, her eyes cast down. I don't know, Mark. I was lost. I thought I could find happiness somewhere else. I was looking for something that was missing, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Looking for something? What about us? Did you even try talking to me? I shot back, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. This isn't something you just throw away because you're feeling lost. I know, and I'm so sorry, she exclaimed, tears streaming down her face. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I could fix it on my own, and then everything spiraled out of control. I took a deep breath, trying to process her words. You didn't think about the consequences of your actions. You didn't think about how much this would hurt me. No, I did, she cried, her voice shaky. I was selfish. I just wanted to feel wanted again. I didn't think it would lead to feelings for Tom. It just happened. Her admission hit me hard. The truth was that she hadn't just made a mistake, she had sought validation in someone else's arms. And while you were off with him, what was I supposed to do? Just wait for you to realize you made a mistake? I didn't think it would go this far. I thought I could separate the two, my feelings for you and the thrill of something new, she said, her voice breaking. But I see now that I was wrong. I never wanted to lose you. Yet here we are, I replied, my heart heavy. You pushed me away and I'm left picking up the pieces. I need to know if you're willing to fight for us. If you truly regret what you did, are you ready to do the work to rebuild our trust? The question hung in the air like a fog. I could see the realization wash over her face. She was looking into the abyss of what she had done and the possibility that I might not be willing to forgive. Yes, I want to fight for us. I'll do whatever it takes, she said, her voice filled with urgency. I couldn't help but feel skeptical. Words are just words, Jessica. You need to show me that you mean it. It'll take more than just saying you regret it. I understand, she exclaimed, her desperation palpable. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I want to save our marriage. I love you, Mark, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me. Hearing her say that brought a mix of emotions. Part of me longed to believe her, to let her back in and try to make this work. But the other part of me, the part that had been shattered by her betrayal, screamed to protect myself. Let be clear, I said, my voice steady. I'm not making any promises. This isn't going to be easy. I'll need time and you'll need to prove yourself to me. Trust, once broken, takes a long time to rebuild. I understand and I'm willing to do the work, she replied, determination flickering in her eyes. I'll show you that I can change. I'll go to therapy and figure out why I did this. I want my life back with you. The conversation left me feeling exhausted but slightly hopeful. I knew moving forward wouldn't be easy, but if she was genuinely committed to repairing the damage, maybe there was a chance. We could try to rebuild what had been broken, but we both had a long road ahead. That night I lay awake, contemplating what our future could look like. I felt a mix of dread and cautious optimism. The journey to healing wouldn't be straightforward. It would be riddled with setbacks, moments of doubt, and painful reminders of the past. But as I considered the possibility of moving forward together, I realized that I didn't want to throw away years of love and companionship without giving it one last shot. I had always believed in the power of love to heal, but now I knew I had to protect my heart while navigating this new path. It would be a delicate balance of hope and caution. As I drifted off to sleep, I resolved to take things one day at a time, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with my eyes wide open. It was time to start anew, with both of us working to reclaim what we once had. I wasn't sure if it would work out, but I was willing to give it a chance, if she truly was too. The following weeks were a whirlwind of raw emotions, open conversations, and hard work. Jessica and I began attending couples therapy, where we were forced to confront the painful truths of our relationship. It was daunting at first, sitting across from a therapist who pulled at the threads of our marriage, exposing the vulnerabilities we had hidden for so long. In our sessions, Jessica opened up about her struggles with self-worth and the feelings of neglect that had driven her to seek validation elsewhere. I listened intently, trying to understand her perspective, even as the sting of her betrayal lingered in my heart. It was a difficult balance, acknowledging her feelings without letting go of my own. As weeks turned into months, I started to see changes in Jessica. She was committed to the process, attending therapy, and making an effort to communicate openly with me. She even started journaling her feelings, which she shared with me during our sessions. It was a small step, but it showed me that she was willing to do the work to repair what had been broken. The road to recovery was paved with ups and downs. There were days when I felt hopeful and optimistic, and others when the pain felt like a fresh wound. I had to constantly remind myself that healing takes time, and that it was okay to feel a mix of hope and doubt. One evening, while sitting on the porch, the sun setting in vibrant hues, I turned to Jessica. "I'm proud of you," I said genuinely. "I can see you're trying, and that means a lot to me." Her eyes sparkled with gratitude and she reached for my hand. "I want to show you every day that I'm committed to making this work," she said softly. "I never want to hurt you like that again. I've learned so much about myself in therapy, and I'm finally figuring out what I truly want." Those moments, the quiet ones filled with sincere conversation, began to build a new foundation for us. We slowly started rediscovering each other, taking small steps to reconnect. We planned date nights, shared our dreams, and even laughed together again. It was tentative, like walking on eggshells, but it was progress. However, with healing came inevitable reminders of the past. There were nights when I would wake up in a cold sweat, haunted by memories of her betrayal. I would lay there, my heart racing, consumed by doubt. Would she cheat again? Would I ever fully trust her? I often found myself leaning into those feelings in therapy, discussing my fears and insecurities. Jessica would listen intently, her eyes filled with empathy. It was a reminder that we were in this together. Slowly, I learned to voice my thoughts instead of bottling them up, and it became easier to acknowledge my vulnerability. As summer turned to fall, I noticed a significant shift in both of us. We had established new routines, and Jessica had started to rebuild her friendships that had faded during her affair. She was making an effort to connect with the people in her life, and I was happy to see her growing as an individual. One day, while we were out for a walk, I noticed her joy was genuine. She laughed freely, and I felt a warmth spread in my chest. I realized it was the first time in a long while that I felt a semblance of peace. The shadows of betrayal were still present, but they were beginning to fade as we built new memories together. Then came a pivotal moment. We were sitting on the couch watching a movie when Jessica turned to me, her expression serious. "Mark, I want to talk about the future," she said, her voice steady. "I know we've been taking things day by day, but I want you to know that I'm all in. I want to rebuild our life together." I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. "I want that too, Jess, but we have to keep working at it. I can't promise that I won't have moments of doubt, but I want to try," I replied, my heart racing. She smiled, her eyes shining with hope. "That's all I ask. Let's keep being open and honest with each other. We can rebuild trust brick by brick." As we held hands, I felt a flicker of hope ignite inside me. It was a long journey ahead, but we were on the right path. We were both learning to forgive, not just each other, but ourselves. The pain of the past still lurked in the shadows, but it no longer defined us. In the months that followed, we continued to grow together. We faced challenges, but we faced them as a team. I learned that love isn't just about the good times, but also about weathering the storms together. It was about understanding, healing, and being willing to forgive. As I reflect on everything that has transpired, I realize that the betrayal reshaped my perspective on love and relationships. I learned that vulnerability is strength, and that real love requires effort. It's not about perfection, it's about commitment. My advice to anyone facing a similar situation is this: healing is possible. It takes time, patience, and a willingness to confront the painful truths. You'll have to navigate the complexities of emotions, trust, and forgiveness, but it can be done. Jessica and I are still on our journey, and while the road is often fraught with challenges, we are committed to each other and to rebuilding what was broken. Every day is a step toward a stronger future, and I am cautiously optimistic that love can truly conquer all, even betrayal. In the end, she thought I was oblivious. I was merely waiting for the right moment to reclaim my life, and in doing so, I discovered that love can endure through trials if both partners are willing to fight for it.